Luka Doncic versus Cooper Flagg. Which situation was better to build around? Cooper right now or Luka Doncic entering his sophomore season in the league? Talking about that on today's Locked On Mavs.
This is Cooper Flagg, and you're listening to Locked On Mavs.
I think that's a good question.
Good morning, Isaac. All these changes, I still got my dog, Dwight Powell.
Your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast.
No one's dying.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Still killing.
Your team every day.
I'm going to get a city like that.
You are locked on the Dallas Mavericks. This is one of your hosts, Isaac Harris, covering the Mavs for the last 10 years alongside my good friend Nick Angstead. And today I'm talking about Cooper Flagg and Luka Doncic. I'm not comparing them as players. Not at all. I'm comparing their situations. Both of them entering their sophomore seasons for the Mavericks. Which situation was better? Cooper entering this fall or Luka Doncic in the fall of 2019? Which situation was better? Thanks for making the Locked On Sports Network the #1 sports podcasting network out there. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA figure and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right. There's not any polarizing topic at all than in the Mavs world. And compare Luka to Cooper. Oh my gosh. I'm not comparing them as players. I just said that, but I just want to get that out of the way. Just really, really quick, make it very clear. Not comping them as players, but I want to look at their situations because when you have a guy like Luka Doncic, let's just go before Luka. You had Dirk for 20 years, over 20 years, over 2 decades of Dirk Nowitzki in Dallas. And then we were lucky enough to have this overlap of Dirk and Luka together, which I think in hindsight, the further we get away from that 1 year of overlap, Luka's rookie season and Dirk's last season, which is one of the crazier, more memorable years for me to cover the Mavs and to be around that team. It was just a fun team to be around and to cover Dirk's last ride there. And Luka's, it was just wild. The further we get away from that, the wildest that's just going to seem crazy. And 10, 15 years from now, you're like, wait, they played together? That's not a Photoshop? Nope, they did. But you had those 20 years of Dirk right into Luka, and then you have, Luka for those 7 years. And I think one of the things with this situation right now of having a generational type of talent, I'll throw the word generational out when it comes to Cooper Flagg is, well, how do you build around Cooper? What are the types of pieces that you have to build around Cooper? What are the assets that you have to use to build around Cooper? And the thing with having Cooper now is you just came off this run of bringing in this generational type of rookie in Luka Doncic that I think you can look at it and say, what are the lessons that we learned from building around Luka that we can apply to building around Cooper? Even though it's 2 different regimes, right? We're going to be 3 regimes removed from, that front office group that brought in Luka in 2018. But still, I think we can look at it even as us as fans. If you were there, at the very beginning when they brought in Luka in those first Luka years, you got to see the decisions they made of who they're going to put around Luka, who they're going to go all in for, like a Kristaps Porzingis. Literally before the end of his rookie season, they're like, we're going to swing for Porzingis coming off the ACL injury. So what can they learn from Cooper, and which situation was better? Because I think even looking at, you look at Luka's situation and all that he accomplished in Dallas in those, 7 years is, you look at the finals appearance, you look at the other conference finals, 2 conference finals appearances, basically. You had some cool playoff moments there. You had the shot against the Clippers in the bubble. And then you just look at the rosters that they put around Luka too. And some of those rosters were just not very good at all, but Luka just drugged them to the playoffs. But is Cooper's situation better than what it was for Luka in 2019? Entering, and that's what I want to do in this pod is I want to look at the situations after their rookie years. So we're looking at May let's just say April of 2019, the end of Luka's rookie season, and then we'll look at the end of Cooper's season right now, going into their sophomore season, what situation was better? So let's look at first of when we look at roster building, I want to look at their draft picks. Which draft picks did they have going into each of their sophomore seasons? So you look at Luka. I think the thing that gets overlooked the most when it comes to building around Cooper, and this is why I was Team Tank all along since the AD injury. I wouldn't say I was Team Tank at the very beginning of the season before injuries happened and all of that. I wasn't that. And I wasn't Team Tank then. But once we got to a certain point early in the season, I was like, hey, this is when you just got to call it in, because you look at where Luka was at, and missing out on that 2019 first round pick was huge for building around Cooper. They had the first round pick before Luka and Dennis Smith Jr., but Dennis didn't really fit. He was a point guard, right? Like, he didn't fit really around Luka. So a lot of times when you have these really, really good young players, you get like 1, maybe 2 years in the lottery. Like, you get very few years because they're so good, right? Like, Cooper is so good that even if they did own their draft pick in 2027, they're probably not going to be getting a top, big draft pick because Cooper's that good. Luka was that good that his sophomore season, they're starting to win games. Like, hey, we're not going to be one of the worst teams in the league. You look at the Luka trade. In order for them to move up in the draft in 2018 to get Luka, they had to give up their 2019 first round pick that was top 5 protected. It comes into the draft lottery in May of 2019. They didn't get lucky. That pick goes to Atlanta, and that's when Atlanta gets Cam Reddish. But can you imagine if for some reason they could have pulled off the Luka trade and kept their 2019 pick? Then you're bringing in a lottery pick rookie, and now you can go to the 2019 draft and say, oh, who could they have gotten? They could have gotten a rookie PJ Washington or a Cam Johnson, I guess Cam Reddish. But there are some other players through there. Tyler Hero was a few picks after that in 2019. Either way, you would have added a young rookie player to where even if it didn't excel at the highest of levels, you have that trade asset that you can move for something else. And that's what they're getting with Cooper Flagg. That's one of the biggest differences out of all of this, of building around and starting a Cooper sophomore season compared to Luka's sophomore season, is Cooper's going to have a running mate. Like, Cooper's going to have a lottery pick in this 2026 draft that is most likely going to be one of those top guards, or if they move up in the top 4, he's going to have a guy on the wing, whether it's DeBonta or Peterson or Boozer or Wilson or Fleming. I mean, like, any of those guys, you're going to have that piece that I think can excel. I think all those guys can fit next to Cooper. But even if it doesn't fit to the highest of degrees, you have that trade asset to build around Cooper. But let's keep on going. You have, that's the difference, is you don't have that next draft pick that Cooper has. Luka didn't have it. When you look at the drafts for Luka's rookie contract, this is what they had in 2020. 2 years after that, they had their first round pick. That's where they picked 18. They picked Josh Green. In 2021, they didn't have their first because they gave it up in the Porzingis trade that they swung for. In 2022, they had their first round pick. They end up trading it for Christian Wood. In 2023, they had their first round pick, but this is where they moved around, and they moved around and got Dereck Lively. That's when, it was into 2022 that they tanked those last few games, and everybody lost their minds nationally. Like, I can't believe Dallas is losing games right now. And it's like, people have been doing this for years. And they kept their pick because it landed at 10. They end up getting Dereck Lively. And in 2024, they didn't have a first. So going into the rest of Luka's rookie contract, they had 3 first that they could play around with, that they could keep, or they could, trade, because they didn't have their 2019, they didn't have their 2021, they didn't have their 2024. When you compare that to where Cooper's at right now, they're going to have their top 20, their lottery pick in 2026. In 2027, they don't have their pick. In 2028, it's an OKC swap. So you have a pick in the first round, but it's going to be probably the last pick in the draft. In 2029, you get the Lakers pick. Dallas's pick goes out. And in 2030, you have a pick with the Spurs. That's a swap. And you have the Warriors pick that's protected that might not, it's top 20 protected. So you might not get that pick, might turn into some seconds. So if you look at just the picks outside of the direct draft right after Cooper and Luka, it's kind of similar, right? You have some picks that are going elsewhere. It's not like one of the situations you had all of your first, in the other situation, you didn't have any first. It's kind of the same outside of probably the biggest outlier is Cooper's going to have a young running mate that they're going to draft in 2026 that they just didn't have that piece for Luka in 2019. I want to take a break, but I want to come right back and talk about which roster was better. The roster around Luka or the roster around Cooper. And I'm doing all this for a reason that I'm going to talk about at the very end. But first, let's take a quick break and make some money through some sponsors. This podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. Guys, this is where you need to make a hire. Indeed is the place to go. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. Guys, here's the thing. Indeed, I hired somebody off Indeed, and I still work with them today. It's one of the best people I've ever hired. And so I love hiring off Indeed. I've had good experience with it. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who will check all the boxes. And listeners to this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. This podcast is also brought to you by our friends over at TurboTax. It's tax season. You got a little bit more time left, so just take it off your plate. All right. You're busy. Give it to TurboTax. It doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. It's a huge time saver and gives you a real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take your taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
All right, I'm talking about the Mavs. I'm talking about Cooper Flagg, Luka Doncic, comparing their situations of who had the better situation to build around going into their second season in the league. I want to say real quick, thank you for everyone who is subscribed to our Discord through our Everydayer program. Our Discord is a fun place for a lot of you guys have been talking and debating whether it's the draft and all the stuff. So it's been a lot of fun through there. Or if you subscribe to our text line on Subtext, thank you for doing that. You can sign up for either one of those. Honestly, that's how Nick and myself interact with Mavs fans the most, is through those two things, because Twitter is, it's Twitter. So you can sign up for any of those on the description of our show, wherever you listen to right now. All right, talking about the situations, talking about their the draft picks a little bit ago. Which player had the better roster going into their second season? Now, I get it. We don't know exactly what the roster looks like for Cooper because we have the whole offseason. We have the draft coming up. And let's see what the roster looks like. But let's go down memory lane and look at Luka Doncic's roster entering his second season in the league. We had Kristaps Porzingis, who is coming off the ACL surgery, who they just handed the big contract to. Remember all those debates? And it's like, oh my gosh, you traded for him. You have to give him all the money now, even though you hadn't seen him play. But KP wasn't that bad in Dallas. It just, there was a disconnect of him and Luka towards the end there. So you had Porzingis coming off the ACL. You had Harrison Barnes. You had Tim Hardaway Jr. You had Dorian Finney-Smith. You had Jalen Brunson, who came in with Luka. So Jalen Brunson entering his second season in the league. Brunson was not Brunson. This is one of our pet peeves that we've always done a lot, is when people post the like image of like Luka and Brunson and KP. And it's like, man, they really fumbled the bag there. And it's like, yes, they did fumble the bag in a way. To be fair, a little bit, Brunson was not Brunson those first year or two in the NBA, but they still should have re-signed him. That was a fumbling of the bag in a way with Brunson. So yeah, young Brunson, Maxey, DeLon Wright, Seth Curry, Boban. JJ Barea, and here's a name I bet you didn't think was going to be on the show today, Isaiah Roby. I know a lot of you guys convinced yourselves into Isaiah Roby back in the day. So yeah, you're looking at like a Porzingis, HB, Hardaway Jr., Dorian, Brunson with Luka type of team, type of lineup compared to this is what's going to look like for Cooper entering his second season in the league. You're going to get a Kyrie Irving probably back, first time playing. We'll see. They're supposed to announce something in the near future on what his status is for the rest of the season. But either way, you're getting a healthy Kyrie Irving coming back from his ACL injury. So in a weird way, you're going to have two vets coming off both the situations, coming off ACL injury. Once again, here's the difference. They're going to have a 2026 lottery pick that they're going to be bringing into camp with Cooper Flagg. You're going to have another young player in Max Christie. You're going to have some vets in there, Naji Marshall and PJ Washington. You get to see Dereck Lively will probably most likely be on this roster and will probably be your starting center going into training camp. Gafford, I expect him to get traded since they tried so hard to trade him at the deadline. Klay Thompson, we'll see what happens to him over the summer. Which roster is better? I'll wait. Yes, I think all of us would probably agree it's Cooper's, right? Like Porzingis, Barnes, Hardaway, Dorian, Brunson, compared to Kyrie, Max, Naji, PJ, lottery pick, Lively. We'll see what they do in the offseason. Once again, it's hard to really comp it too much right now with Cooper Flagg because I expect them to do a little roster shakeup over the offseason. But then let's keep on going. Let's look at the coach situation. You had Rick Carlisle for Luka Doncic in year 2. You had Jason Kidd for Cooper Flagg in year 2. Which coach would you prefer in year 2? Rick Carlisle, Jason Kidd. I'll let you guys argue over that one. Luka Doncic, year 2, has had Donnie Nelson as GM. Cooper Flagg has, I don't know. We don't know yet, right? Like, I think this will be interesting to look at come this fall in August of saying, man, like, Cooper Flagg, like, all right, he had this GM. It's his first year on the job as the full-time GM. Who is it? That type of thing. And I think that's one of the things with, when you look at the GM search for Dallas and who they're going to bring in here, it's such an important hire because we've talked about multiple different ways that they could go, right? Like, I mean, you look at Matt Riccardi and Michael Finley, that what they're doing right now. They make the AD trade. A lot of Mavs fans were pretty impressed with that trade, right? I mean, we're looking at opening up so much flexibility come draft time and the offseason and financially and trading AD to Washington. But let's see what wins out. I mean, we have talked pretty openly on this podcast. It started off as kind of a joke, but it's not a joke. Like there are some legs to it in a way of will Jason Kidd be the next GM of this team? We asked Tim McMahon of ESPN on this podcast, like, hey, what's the odds that Jason Kidd is the next GM of this team? And you guys can go look at his response to that because it was kind of funny. Jason Kidd has made it known in the past that he wants to be in the front office, and this would be a situation in which he could do that, right? Like, you move into the front office. He's friends with Michael Finley. He's friends with Dirk Nowitzki, and Dirk, is he going to be back in the fold at some point? Can Jason Kidd bring back an old friendly face in Sean Sweeney? Could he hire a different type of younger coach to be the next head coach? But then there's also what Dumont has been very open about what he's going after and what he would prefer. Is he wants experience. And honestly, I'm with Dumont on this of I want somebody in this position that's been there and done that. I think that is going to be such an important hire for Dallas. And I mean, you could say I'm just kind of like burnt from it and recency bias, but I'm kind of burnt and done with the, like, I don't want to swing for somebody new. Like, hey, it's their first time doing this type of thing. Like, even with a guy like Finley and Riccardi, they've at least like been in the front office. They've done it. Like, they've done this type of stuff for a long time. They know the gist of the job. I'm talking about like like, hey, we're going to go get an agent, or like, I don't want to do the Nico experience again. But when we look at guys that Dumont could possibly be going after, of, hey, and because every time you see a report about it from Patrick Dumont's side, is he's going after people who've had experience before, that could be working for teams right now, that could have recently had that role for teams before, some of the big names. I don't think anybody has crossed off the list for who Dumont might try to go after, at least make a call to. So I'll be fascinated. I actually want to go over a few of those names real quick, coming up right after the break. This podcast is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. I looked up the odds the other day of odds for the number one pick, and Peterson was the favorite. DeBonsa was number 2. Cam Boozer was like a plus 800, plus 850, somewhere through there. A lot of people have those three guys together in this like top tier by themselves. If you think Cam Boozer will go number 1, that's a plus 800, plus 850 odds there on FanDuel. So if you ever want to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA final trip for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. And now, not only can you pick cash, but it can also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on NBA future and get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
All right, I'm talking about building around Luka, building around Cooper, and I'm talking about the GM search and how I think this next hire. Luka had, he had Rick Carlisle and he had Donnie Nelson going into year 2. They had both been there for a while. They kind of knew everything that's going on, how things run there in Dallas. It's kind of new experiences for Cooper's situation, right? Like Jason Kidd is here. But will Jason Kidd be here next year? Will he be in a different role next year? Right now, they don't have a full-time GM. Who are some of the GM names? So we've heard, if Dumont goes big name shopping, we've heard him. I mean, we've heard that he has called Bob Myers and asked advice and stuff at different times. I think it's Tim Cato who said that on this podcast when we had him on a few months ago. He could always call a guy like Masai. Masai hasn't been with the Raptors for a while, but does he try to bring Masai back into the fold, into the NBA in a GM, president of basketball operations type of role? It depends on, however you want to title that, however they want to break down the front office that way. Which they're pretty similar in that. Is it Dennis Lindsey? I mean, this is somebody Mark Cuban has openly talked about. They had Dennis Lindsey in the front office there a few years ago, whenever Haralabob was there. Dennis Lindsey is up in Detroit. Detroit's doing incredible work right now. So does he leave that type of job to be like head decision maker in Dallas? Is Dumont looking at Dennis Lindsey as a guy like, hey, I would like to have Lindsey to come back? Or does he look at it and say, hey, I want somebody brand new in here that's never been in here before? 2 names that I would look at, and one name I've thrown out before. I threw out this name in November as soon as Nico was hired, or we were fired. I think it was December or 1st December, somewhere through there that Nico was fired. I should know that. But one of the names that I threw out then was David Griffin, and I would keep an eye on him. And does Dallas entertain that? Because I think he checks some of the boxes that I think Dumont would be going after. If he's wanting a guy who's like been there, done that as a decision maker in the front offices, as a GM, president of basketball operations type of guy, check. If you want a guy that has the experience, that has built around a star player before, Maybe like a LeBron James in Cleveland. Well, okay, check. Maybe you want a guy that is, which we've actually seen this reporting. I think it was Stein who reported that Dumont wants the next GM guy to be more front facing. He wants him taking questions in front of the mic more and more media friendly and savvy. Well, guess who's like been in broadcasting? And I mean, I was just watched another interview with him the other day at All-Star Weekend. Is David Griffin. Like, he's very comfortable in interviews and on the mic and doing broadcast stuff and TV stuff. So I'm not saying it's like, oh, the stars are aligning. I could just see all the reasonings behind. And you look at it, you're like, all right, why does he have a job in New Orleans? Because that was the last job he had. He was the president of basketball operations or vice president, whatever the official title role was there in New Orleans. And it's up to you how much you want to put on him, because I think there was a lot of the decisions made there, a lot of the drafting stuff that I really liked. I liked a lot of the players that they drafted there. Should he have gotten rid of Zion earlier? Yeah, you could criticize him for that. Could you criticize him for the DeJounte Murray trade and giving up Dyson Daniels? Yeah, you can criticize him for that. You can find different decisions there to criticize of David Griffin, but I could see the David Griffin routes. Yeah, it just wouldn't shock me, right, if his name came up more over the coming months. Another name I'd look at is Calvin Booth. Calvin Booth obviously played for Dallas, had a memorable moment for Dallas back in the day, but he had a weird drama-filled ending there in Denver, but he was a recently fired GM from the Nuggets there a few years ago, actually won a title as the GM when the Nuggets won their title. He obviously has some Dallas connections. So do they go that route? So those are two names, David Griffin, Calvin Booth. One of the things that I've seen reported on multiple times is, hey, like, they're interested in people who are currently like working in the league, like have jobs or GM jobs with other teams right now. Here are three situations that if these three teams like flamed out early in the playoffs, that I could see their GMs like being on the hot seat, or it wouldn't shock me if they're like, whoa, this one just got fired. That would he go calling for a guy like that? Would Rafael Stone in Houston? What if they flame out earlier? Their vibes isn't really the greatest right now. Shout out KD. What about Jeff Weltman in Orlando? What about, this would be the wildest thing, and this guy just followed slightly like a few weeks ago. What if Daryl Morey left Philly and was like, hey, I'm going to go down to Dallas? Wouldn't Daryl Morey be the type of guy that Dumont would be like, hey, I think I've heard of this guy before? And Philly might just want to like move on, shift to this like younger squad that they got now. Yeah, that I've heard of crazier things, but would Morey in Dallas just be like, it would be kind of like funny and wild at the same time. So I haven't heard anything about those three, but I was trying to look at teams that I'm like, oh, okay, what team has expectations that if they got bounced, that they could like be on the hottish seat? Those are three names. I wouldn't say Morey's really in that list, but I say all of this in this whole episode to say Cooper Flagg's in a better situation than what Luka Doncic was going into year 2. And I think that's really exciting. I think that's super exciting. I think there's a better draft pick situation for Cooper Flagg. I think because you have that 2026 pick, I think there's a better roster situation for Cooper Flagg than what Luka had in year 2. I think the only thing that I think it's like you can't really judge it right now is what is the coach GM combo for Cooper Flagg over the course of his rookie contract. And that's what we just don't know, right? Like, we don't know who's going to be the long-term. Like, if you're telling me, hey, Jason Kidd's not the head coach next year, whether he's the GM or not, wouldn't be shocked, right? Kidd flirted with taking the Knicks job this past summer. So it wouldn't shock me again if he tried to, if he tried to leave again this upcoming offseason. So what will be the coach GM combo for Cooper over this rookie season? And who's easier to build around, Luka or Cooper? Do we want to have that debate right now? I think Cooper's easier to build around than Luka. All right, there you go. We'll be back with one more thing later on today. Peace out. Boom.